Go for it.
Okay, welcome to my home. We're going to do challah today. Challah is very easy and it's very difficult to mess up. There's a couple of really basic things that you need to do, but it's different than baking because baking is exact. And when you make bread, especially challah, you're approximating your amount of flour. That's going to depend on the temperature in your room, the temperature of your ingredients. That always changes how much flour gets incorporated into your water and oil. So that's the first thing. So it's going to be really easy. It's not anything to be afraid of. Challah is the easiest thing you can do. The braiding gets a little difficult. We're going to be doing the braiding together. You have two recipes. One is the regular recipe, which has the writing at the bottom. It will make a 2-pound challah. The double recipe will make 3 or 4 1-pound challahs. You decide, because that will give you a lot more dough to work with. And if you have one, and it's by the pound. So if you have a 1.5-pound challah, you're utilizing all of your dough. God bless you. Now, the reason why, yes.
I'm just curious, you know, how big is a 1 pound challah? How big is a one? Like I can't envision what are these.
A regular size challah that you would buy at Trader Joe's is the size of a 2-pound challah. It's the size of a 1-pound challah. It's a 1-pound challah. It's a lot lighter because their ingredients are different, and it bakes up a lot lighter, but it's basically that size. It's your regular family size challah. So the reason why I wrote instructions rather than use the instructions in the book that I get this recipe from, I've been using it for years and years and years through a challah business personally. It's a recipe book by a lady named Noreen Gillets. She has since passed away. Noreen is a kosher cookbook writer in Canada. And I discovered her recipe a long, long time ago, and it's for a food processor. So that's the first thing I don't do. I don't put it in a food processor. I use a KitchenAid. You can use any kind of mixer that has a dough hook, or use your hands. It's always your best bet is to use your hands because everything gets incorporated better. The heat from your hands starts to get the gluten in the flour and in the yeast going. And so that will always help it. The reason why I do it, I don't bake for a living, but I bake. But I bake. And so I always have larger quantities. There's proofing in the oven, 7 pounds of dough, because we're going to be doing some braiding together. But I want to get the first recipe done with you so that you can see what we do. And it's so, so easy. Anyway, with the instructions, we're going to use a mixer. We're going to do a lot of things, and I'll explain it as I go along, because you don't need to be one step at a time. Mix a lot of things together. I'm real good on making every minute count, and so I'll combine a lot of things, a number of steps. I'm going to let the water run. Rabbi, if you would please be so kind. There is the prayers. And if you can explain why, can you? Because I can't. But this is to separate.
The blessing, though.
Yeah, this is the blessing.
Are you using, that's not the blessing. Are you using a 5-pound bag of flour?
I'm not using a whole pound of, no. So it's not, I don't have, okay, good. Because there's.
But I can explain that.
Okay, please.
You have the mic there, so hopefully it catches them. Yeah.
How much is the water?
Room temp.
All right, just a quick little thing about the blessing of challah. So there are a lot of mitzvot that you can do that have nothing to do with food. And then there's also the mitzvah of separating challah, there were multiple parts to this. In the times of the temple, that meant that you were giving a portion of the bread that you were making to the priests who were serving as our, I'm going to say, as our representatives to God in the temple. And so every time you made challah, you gave a portion of that to the priest. Nowadays, though, we don't do that. We still separate the challah, though, and it is a mitzvah. And that mitzvah is based on the idea that we're realizing that all your blessings come from God. So even when you're making something for yourself, you take a portion of that and you leave it for God. Now, with challah, though, it depends how much, the truth is, anytime you're making bread, it's not only challah, and I'll explain in a minute that, but anytime you're making bread, technically you would have this opportunity to separate part of it for God and do the mitzvah. Now, the thing is that there's a specific amount of dough that you'd be using to have this mitzvah applicable, and that is a 5-pound bag of flour will put you in the zone, as they say, for this mitzvah. If you do less than that, you don't separate challah. Now, when you're doing this mitzvah, there's a blessing for it. And what Benita was showing me in this booklet, there's a number of prayers or different, like Yehi Ratzons, may it be God's will. Maybe I should just read one of them just to kind of give it. Like, here's, for example, prayer to be recited before separating challah. And so a lot of people don't have the customs of all of this, but everyone does have the custom that while you are separating challah and reciting this blessing, it's an opportune time to ask God for anything that we need, because when we do a mitzvah, we're connected in a greater sense than we're always connected to God. So here is, for example, one of them. And I'm just going to read this from the book. It says, the moment of separating challah is an especially special moment for praying for family and loved ones. You may, of course, offer a personal prayer in your own words, or you can say one of the following. And just so you see, they have 3 different prayers that they're suggesting. Again, you don't have to use those, but here is one of the examples. May it be your will, our God, the God of our fathers, that you bless our dough as you bless the dough of our mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And may we be blessed, as in the verse, you shall give the first yield of your dough. This is the part of the kind of biblical references. This is from Ezekiel. You shall give the first yield of your dough to the Kohen to make a blessing rest upon your home. So that's one of them. And this has another one that's more specific to family. Just as giving the challah to the Kohen in the past served to atone for sin, so may it atone for my sins. Again, these are just different prayers that you can recite. I'm just showing you, I mean, it continues. They have a lot of different options. Prayer for children. This is just may it be your will, God of our fathers, the holy temple be speedily rebuilt, because these are associated. But again, there's no one specific prayer. I'm just going to read one last thing. This says, the informal prayers that women are accustomed to whisper before and after candlelighting, in which they request that God light up their home with domestic harmony and with children radiating reasons for joyful satisfaction. The unsophisticated requests that women customarily make before and after they fulfill the mitzvah of challah by separating part of their dough when they ask that their family be blessed with an ample livelihood, so they will be able to support Torah scholars, contribute generously to charitable causes. The homespun prayers that women customarily utter before and after immersion in a mikvah, when they ask to be blessed with fine and healthy children who will grow up to be pious, upstanding men and women. All of these customs are Torah. So this was a quote from a book called Likutei Diburim, which just gave the 3 mitzvot that are, I'm going to say, primarily performed by women. So candles on Shabbat or holidays, the challah, and also mikvah. And so those are just 3 opportune times for prayers. But again, if you do one, you could do the prayer. If you do the other, you could do the prayer. So that is the idea behind challah. Now, challah, just to add one more thing, which maybe Benita was going to talk about, challah is any dough that you make and separate the dough from the batch of dough.
Yes.
That is the mitzvah of challah. So your challah does not have to look like the way Benita is going to do it with braids. It could look like a bagel. It could look like
be made with spelt.
Exactly.
No, seriously, it can be made with anything.
So challah is the mitzvah of separating the
Right.
dough. It's based off the verse. So traditionally, we've started to see that challah looks with a braid, but it does not have to look that way. That's not what challah is specifically, but
Right. Okay. So I'm going to do, and you can follow along. I'm going to use the double recipe. So what I'm going to do with the double recipe, in my mixing bowl, I'm going to combine all the sugars. So it's a teaspoon of sugar and it is a half a cup of sugar. So we're going to take, and I didn't weigh everything out just cause it was one of those days. Let me get okay. And a half a cup. Okay, so that takes care of the sugar. It all goes there. I keep my yeast in a jar so that it's airproof in the refrigerator. I buy the big block of it. That as soon as you open the bag, it kind of crumbles down. So that's what I do. 2 tablespoons of yeast. Just note, a packet of yeast is 2.5 teaspoons. It's not a tablespoon of yeast. So when I believe you get a much more exact measurement when you use the tablespoon. The half a tablespoon isn't going to make a huge difference to you at all. So we have 2 tablespoons of yeast. Put this back in the fridge. And for some reason, my nose is running like crazy today. It figures, right? And gonna let the water run. So the recipe will say the first 2 ingredients are a teaspoon of sugar and a half a cup of water. We're gonna add all the water because we want everything to incorporate at the same time because it saves time. Challah's a time-consuming product, but it's not a difficult one. You just need the time. So it's a half a cup and 3/4 to a cup. So I'll do a cup and a half of water. The only difference that will make, because it says cup and 3/4 to a cup, I'm going to do a cup and a half, which incorporates the half a cup with the teaspoon of sugar. And then the cup that goes in with the recipe will just mean that I probably have to add a little bit more flour. So, oh, you can see this?
Yeah, if you want, you can push it a little forward to see it better. Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to pour this in here. You don't want to manipulate your yeast and your sugar too much because it'll kill your yeast. Give it just a quick incorporation. Cover it with a towel. And set it aside for a second. So that's just going to sit there. In the meantime, get your oil and your eggs together. Notice I haven't put salt in yet. Salt retards the growth of yeast, so you want to put your salt in last. So it is a half a cup of oil.
So I noticed you're using Crisco, not olive oil. Olive oil would not be good.
No, olive oil is fine. It just gives it a different taste. It gives it an earthier taste. And because it depends on what you're doing. If you're going to make a sweeter challah, now the recipe also says you can use honey or sugar. If you use honey, understand you're adding more liquid, which means you have to adjust and add a little more flour. So start with the flour that's recommended. And then when you go to add it, do it a teaspoon at a time. You can always add, you can never take it out. So once it gets too dry, you then can start to add liquid. And so add your flour in increments if you need a little more. If you're going to fill a challah, which I will show you, with chocolate or anything sweet, you don't necessarily want to use olive oil because it'll give it a savory taste. This is a very, very neutral taste, and that's why we're keeping it. You'll also get kind of the natural taste of what challah should be. So we have the oil in there.
Does it matter if you use vegetable oil instead of another oil?
No. No, and I'm going to break the eggs in here so that we know that there's no blood in them. In there. And then the other one. Can you see what I'm doing? Because I'm just doing. Okay. I forget I'm on camera. So I'd never make a Food Network star. Okay, and there's the other egg. Now we do want to beat the eggs a little bit. And so if you can't see, you'll remind me. So we're going to beat the eggs a little bit. And this recipe calls for 5 cups of flour. And you know, I always, always, always encourage you, if you have not been to any of my classes, then you'll hear for the first time, always shake up your flour. Get the air in it. It will, I never sift flour, no matter what I make. If I make pie dough, if I make cakes, I don't sift flour. I just shake it up. You also want as much air as possible. Flour will compact itself. It falls into itself and it gets heavy. You want a loose pack. It's not like brown sugar. You want a loose pack. So always shake up your flour. It'll also get rid of any clumps that are in there. So
Regular flour or bread flour?
I've never used bread flour. And so I use bread flour for bagels, and I think it gives a denser, drier consistency. So I use King Arthur flour. That's my flour of choice. Let's see. Oh, can you see? It's so foamy. It's exactly what you want. You want me to walk around with it? Okay.
So what's in there? Is the-
Sugar, yeast, and water. And you don't have to do anything more than that. It's just a nice foamy consistency. Your yeast is now growing and alive. Foamy. Yep, your yeast is now growing and alive. It's a nice warm, let your water run. Your water's not going to get that hot that it's going to kill anything. If the water is too hot, don't use boiling water. If the water is too hot, it'll kill your yeast. But the water that comes out of the tap should be perfectly fine. At this point, I'm going to add my 5 cups of flour. 5. And don't use a knife or your finger to straighten it out. Just shake it.
How come you're saying not to use your knife or?
Because it compacts it, and then you're getting more flour than you need. I almost lost count.
3.
We'll do an instant refill. I don't know that I have that.
Do you use packets of yeast?
No, I do not use packets. I use, yes. Yeah, the packets are not as good a measurement, I think, as they should be. It's not as exact.
Well, you could cut it open, pack and pour it in.
Well, that's a huge waste of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just buy the big chunk of it.
How long does it last if you?
Look at, they're usually, the expiration date is usually 2 years. But you want to make sure that your yeast is nice and alive. Always check your expiration date. Okay, dough hook. There we go. And we're going to get it going. You can see
Maybe you could turn
Sideways.
this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see that the flour and the liquid are starting to incorporate. Give it a chance to get going so that you give it, and then pour it slowly, your eggs and your oil. My eggs have been sitting out since probably 6 o'clock this morning. Always work with room temperature eggs. It will change the consistency. It will kill your yeast a little bit, and that's not what you want. And then we're going to put in salt. You would think that I make this recipe every week or 2, because I bake for a event planner that does bar and bat mitzvahs, so I make her hollows. Kosher salt. So you see it all starting to come together? Pardon?
So when you pull it out, let's see if that.
Yeah. What was your question? No, no, I don't adjust. So you see how it's more coarse and it's less salty. So it's, no, anything, when you cook food, you always salt to taste anyway, no matter what a recipe says. If you have an idea of a recipe, then you'll know it. Believe me, it's never going to turn out too salty, no matter what you make. You're always going to want to add a little bit more. So you see, as it's going, well, so for this is a professional size mixer. It's an 8-quart bowl. The instructions are for this mixer to not go higher than 2. So I leave it at number 2 because it's very powerful motor. So you see how it's changing a little bit, and you see how the dough is still sticking on the bottom. That means we're going to start adding little bits of dough because we want everything to pull away. The longer you need, the better. First by the machine and then by hand. Pardon? Okay. Use your hands first. Yeah, what's your choice? Any mixer will do as long as it has a dough hook.
I know you don't have any. It's flavor. How long should you keep the use after you use?
I would go and let it go. You know when you'll know, and you have to be prepared, so you'll know when it doesn't get foamy. That's when your yeast is dead. That's the way you know it does. You don't have to wait till it bakes and not rise. When you put yeast and warm water together, within a few minutes, if it doesn't create a chemical reaction, if it doesn't start to foam, your yeast is dead. Your yeast is dead. So I'm going to put in just a little more. Because I don't want the dough adhering to the sides of the bowl at all.
How long do you keep eggs after the expiration?
Oh, I keep eggs forever. I mean, I use them up quickly, but I never look at an expiration date on eggs. Do you know that in European countries, eggs don't get refrigerated? They're on the shelf next to the bread. Only in America. Only in America. Only in America do they refrigerate eggs. I probably do, because you know what? I usually buy eggs 30 at a time. Sometimes Costco is out of them, so I'll have to buy 60, or Smart and Final sells 60. I have a refrigerator in the garage also. I just use them till I use them up. They're always fine. Eggs are fine. All this stuff they tell you, man. Oh, you see how it's going? So it's already, the sides of my bowl are nice and clean. Okay? Which means I'm going to put a little drop more just to get that last bit up. And then we're going to knead it by hand, because the more you work the dough, the better it will rise. It incorporates your yeast. It incorporates the gluten in the flour.
You did say that when you bake or you're making bread, that you used to leave that meat.
Yeah, I leave them out. Everything at room temperature, especially when you bake. Butter needs to be at room temperature. Anything that has been refrigerated. If you make a sour cream coffee cake, leave your sour cream out. It's not going to go bad, but it needs to be room temperature in order to be able to incorporate well.
So could you add flavors like cinnamon
Not yet.
or?
Not yet. You want this dough to be pure and rise the way it's supposed to. Don't put chocolate chips in it. Don't put raisins in it. Don't put seasoning in it. Leave it a pure dough. So there we go. It's looking terrific.
So then when you say you don't have a mix master, you can use your hands.
Yeah, use a bowl.
Need gloves.
It's up to you. I always wear gloves because I can't stand from. Number one, I bake for other people. So that's number one. And so I do wear gloves because I bake for other people. But I do for my family as well. It's just easier and I hate getting my hands all dirty. Yes. Yes. I've never used a bread machine and I can't answer any questions about a bread machine. I don't know.
It's so easy, man. You don't need to use a bread machine. Look how easy it is. Well, the machine's doing it.
So here we go. I'll move this out of the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna just erase this thing. Are you using the?
I'm done with the mix master. So you can unplug it. And do you mind putting it just on that back counter? This is a very handy little tool. It's a bowl scraper. And can you see? Here. Can you see? It's a bowl scraper and it just gets everything out. Also, when you incorporate the amount of flour that it takes to keep the sides of your bowl clean, you don't need to flour the surface. Every time you add flour, it's another step to dry out your challah. At this way, you won't need to add that extra flour. You don't need to flour your board. And I always work on a mat. And the bowl's empty. So it's really, there you go. And it's not going to, okay, I'm keeping this bowl because we're going to rise in that bowl. So here we go. There we go. So here's a beautiful, like a baby's toches. It's so nice. So start playing with it. Give it a lot of love. Turn it over. And you see it's not sticking to my hands. It's not sticking to the mat. It's the perfect amount of flour. You want to pull on it away from you and fold it back. Pull on it with the palm of your hand and fold it back. That that gets your gluten going, the gluten in the yeast and the gluten in the flour. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful dough. It feels great. It's nice and soft. It's not sticky. You could see it's a gorgeous color. Okay. It's a great way. What? And can you, what more than that? It's easy. I didn't do anything special. I added the ingredients as it said in the recipe, and it's a gorgeous dough. Gorgeous, gorgeous dough. So we're going to spray our bowl. I didn't wash out the bowl. It doesn't matter. You're putting the dough back in. Spray it around. Throw your dough in. Turn it over. And that way it gets coated. I have my oven. I have my oven on proof because I do have a proof button because it's cold today. I usually put my challah dough in the garage to rise because the garage is the warmest part of your house. And that's where it rises. So I first cover it with plastic. Keeps all the moisture in. You could. The oven's not warm. Don't turn your oven on. Don't do fancy stuff. Put it in the garage. It's the warmest spot. Find a sunny spot in your house. If the sun is coming in somewhere and you have a warm spot, put it there. It doesn't matter. It's covered. It's closed. This is it. This is going to rise for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. After an hour, you can punch it down. If I can remember, I punch it down, but I mostly don't. So I made 7 pounds of dough this morning.
Oh, my God.
We're hoping you do. I have no idea. I have no perception as to where that is. Okay, so it's covered with plastic. I'm going to save the plastic because that's what I'm going to use to cover the hollows once they're braided. Okay? Because waste not, want not. So,
Did you know it was gonna be that big?
yeah.
Yeah. She's experienced.
I have to tell you, I tried your trick of shaking up the flour
Uh-huh.
2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
The last class, and I didn't have my hand.
I didn't add that trick.
Flour went all over my hand.
Yeah, keep your hand on it. So now you see this gorgeous hollow. Once I start to play with it, it deflates. Okay.
So is that the same one that you just did now?
I made this is basically, so because I bake, I have to adjust recipes and make them more. So a lot of times I'll make one of those big ceremonial challahs. And so I need to adjust the recipe. And with baking, it's not just doubling. I don't know how I knew what I was doing, but I knew what I was doing. Turns out well.
So ours won't, but we do your recipe that you just did will not be.
No. This is a 7-pound. This is for a 7-pound challah. This is for when I make a ceremonial challah. So this is the dough that I use when I make a large 5-pound ceremonial challah, and then a smaller challah or two.
So that's 7 cups.
This is 11 cups of flour. It's a 7-pound challah. It's 11 cups of flour. Okay. So.
Do you ever use whole wheat flour?
Whole wheat flour is very drying. So if you use whole wheat flour, you have to add more, and you'll find recipes for whole wheat flour. So they'll adjust the liquid, but you'll need more liquid for a whole wheat.
Did you do a blessing on this one?
I did not.
That you can be in front of everyone.
All right, you wanna,
I'll help you. I'm good to go.
oh, right, it's 11 cups of flour.
Yeah. This one you get to do.
This one I get to do.
So you take off a piece and burn it?
Yeah, you can,
Well,
you bake it, you don't have to burn it.
Just let it kind of, you leave it to the side and let it kind of, I'm gonna say spoil.
You can wrap it in foil. Now, I will say that I have a few Rebbitzins. One of my Rebbitzins saves her, she puts her, breaks off a piece, rolls it up in foil, bakes it, and then puts it in the freezer and saves them every single week until Passover, when she has to burn chametz. That she takes those all out of her freezer and uses that.
All right. So for this,
Yes.
cover it with a towel. And this is the blessing that we do. And you'll already take a piece of it.
You want me to take a piece?
Yeah, and you keep it covered while you're doing it. You can do it in the Hebrew and then, or in the English, whichever is easier for you.
Well, I could do, well,
It's
Baruch
transferred.
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, a bigger piece?
Yeah. Unless it's gonna mess up your whole day.
No.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahafrish challah.
Amen.
Let
And now you say this is Harezu Challah.
this, this is Harezo
Yeah,
challah.
this is Challah. Okay, perfect.
Okay. And then I'm gonna,
You can read it next time.
thank you, set that aside. So what I want to do, I'll show you a regular 3 braid hollow. Hopefully, I don't want to assume everybody knows how to braid. One thing, remember, when you are working with challah and you are not working with all of your challah, keep the other covered because it will dry out very, very quickly. It'll start to get a skin over it, and that's not what you want. So, because challahs are supposed to look symmetrical, I weigh each strand. So I'm going to do, I think I want to just do 2 ounces. Can you see what I'm doing? Actually, I'll do 2.5.
2 ounce piece.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make strands. So I'm going to show you a 6-strand challah.
You're gonna be the Howard princess.
Or the queen, one or the other.
Look, I'm sorry, I should.
I'm going to get my plastic
That you saved.
that I saved and keep it here. It's going to have several uses. And then what we're going to do, so I'll show you 6-strand, and then if you want to come up to the counter, we can work and you can work. I can show you on your own, if you're brave enough to attempt to do the 6-strand. It's very, very easy. You just have to remember this is hilarious, right? Somebody's ringing.
It's not yours. We fixed yours.
That's so funny.
It's actually better to just pretend it's not your phone.
Just look around. Oh, it's not mine.
That's honest.
True.
That's honest, right away.
But then you don't get the embarrassment.
Better to be embarrassed than honest. Absolutely.
Well, that's a good debate. Better to be embarrassed or honest?
Honest.
Because this one didn't harm anyone, so it's better that you shut it later.
You should always have a kitchen scale. It will help you tremendously. It's not much.
I will just use that. I can be embarrassed. I can be embarrassed myself. It's all good. I've got enough time to be comfortable with it.
Okay. All right, we're just going to move this aside. So,
Can you see? Small karma?
can you see?
Yeah.
I just want to move these up here,
Like meatballs.
keep them covered.
Impossible.
Okay, so you want
What did you measure?
2.5 ounces, but you're going to divide your dough in 6s, if you can do the math. You're going to divide your dough in 6. So you put your whole ball of dough on the scale and then divide by 6, and that's how much you need each strand. And I'm not a mathematician, and I figured that out. So, and this is going to be a small challah because usually for a 2-pound challah, obviously, I have 6 5-ounce strands. So when you wrote that's, and you see that it's really not curling up because it's had a great amount of time to rise. So you've got your tapered ends and then a little bit thicker in the middle. We're going to do that 6 times. About 2 hours. I think I put it in to rise around 9:30, 9:40.
She was up at 6 a.m.
I always do. And I do have to apologize because you don't have anything to eat today. And I always feed you. But this, and I was going to make something else. And I thought there's really not going to be time. So when you roll your strands, start in the middle with your hands back and forth and pull it out. It's real light. Start in the middle. And there you go. Start in the middle and roll it out. How many of you make challah? This is, there's got to be 5 million recipes for challah. And I've tried them all. I've gone to every challah class they've ever done in town, and I've tried them all. And this recipe happens to be just the best combination of weights that I have found. I bake it at 400 degrees. So I bake it hot and long for a half hour. The outside's very, very dark. And I think, rather than that light golden, to me is a raw challah. So I bake it dark. It doesn't look burnt, but it's just a real beautiful, shiny mahogany color. And it's very soft and pillowy inside.
At which point would you put your chocolate chips?
I'll get there. We'll get there. I'm doing one thing at a time. Now, because these strands are so small, they're going to be difficult to fill, which is why I'm not doing it now, but I'll do it next when we do the 3-strand. And as I say, that your dough has risen long enough when it doesn't snap back. You'll know a lot of times you'll get your strands going and then they shrink up. And then you have to pull them apart and then they shrink up. It just means that it didn't rise long enough and the gluten hasn't been developed enough. You can also get your dough started in between your hands and get a strand going. It's a great thing to do with kids, grandkids.
How many inches are you?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. I guess they're about 14, but you'll see how it goes. So I'm going to turn this around because it's a lot easier to work this way. Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have our 6 strands with their tapered edges. Taper them again. Gather them all up. Gather them all up, twist them together, fold it under a little bit, and separate your 6 strands. There's 2 things to remember. You start with the 2nd strand, and I didn't write these because it's a lot easier to see it. If you want to take notes for yourself, please do. Start with the 2nd strand. The 2nd strand goes over. This is the 1st strand. This one goes in the middle. Now we're on this side. The 2nd strand goes over. The 1st one goes in the middle. The 2nd strand goes over. The 1st one goes in the middle. The 2nd strand goes over. And the 1st one goes in the middle.
So the first one is the 2nd strand that went over previously.
You start with the 2nd strand, goes over. 1st one in the middle. 2nd strand goes over. 1st one in the middle. 2nd one over. 1st one in the middle. And I have to keep telling it to myself. 2nd one over. 1st one in the middle.
So confusing.
It's not confusing. 2nd one over. 1st one in the middle. 2nd one over. 1st one in the middle. Second one over. 1st one in the middle. 2nd one over. 1st one in the middle. 2nd one over. 1st one in the middle. And at this point, gather it.
Well, beautiful.
Yeah.
Let me get a pan.
Wow.
Now this is going to rise Um, I use parchment paper. I don't oil anything. So we're going to cover this. This can rise anywhere from, you want to see it almost double in size, but you see how pretty that is?
So it rises twice. It has to rise before you.
No, so what I usually, oh, yes, yeah, always, yes. It has to rise when braided. Don't egg wash it yet, because the egg will seep into the dough and it just makes it not good. Make sure it's covered. And so we're going to leave that sit here. Okay, to fill a challah, we'll do a oh, you know what? Before we do that, I'll show you a four-strand braided circle, which you don't necessarily always have to do around challah at Rosh Hashanah time. This one is really pretty. All right, we'll do 2.5.
Also 2.5 pounds?
Oh, I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. Your dough, if you're making one challah, you're gonna put, you weren't listening before. If you're making one challah, you're gonna put your whole ball of dough onto the scale, weigh it, and then divide it by, if you're doing a 4-strand, divide it by 4. If you're doing a 3-strand, divide it by 3. And if you're doing the 6-strand, divide it by.
What are you doing right now? 2.5?
I'm going to do a 4, but I'm going to do 2.5 ounces for a 4-strand. Paper. Oh,
Good now.
This is a round.
I'm making a braided round. Right now, I'm going to show you a braided round. I'll show you that too. That's why I made a lot of dough. Yes. And it feels so good. It really feels so good. No, it feels so good. It's so lovely. And the time that it takes to make your strands is also great time for your dough to continue to rise. It just continues to activate the gluten and the yeast, and you get a softer, sweeter, I say sweet, but not taste-wise, but just a softer, pillowy challah. You can over-rise it. You particularly can over-rise it when it's braided. Don't let it go more than a half hour. I usually will braid it and then turn on my oven. My oven takes a while to heat up to 400, usually and I put the challah in the garage. So. Okay, there's 4. All righty, you're going to do the same thing, make 4 strands. You don't, because it's a really clean challah, you're not throwing out flour and you're not messing up your counter. You don't necessarily have to use a mat, but if you want to keep your counter clean, these mats are great. Oh, this was, yes, this is a gift. You know, since Bed Bath & Beyond closed, geez Louise, you might think nobody cooks anymore. 1. 2. They're not particularly straight. I'll straighten those out. It's like anything, you know, when you make the first one and it's perfect. Then you go do the second one. Okay, when is this over? So I can be a very impatient cook, but that's not good. Okay, 3 and 4. Now this one's really, really simple. And I'm glad you could all see it so well. Okay, so you're going to kind of set it up like a checkerboard. 1, 2, 3, 4, and have them close together. Okay, so this one will go under like lattice, and this one will go under like lattice. Okay, so now that's where you start. Start with the left-hand one, go to the left, the next one goes to the left, the next one goes to the left, and the next one goes to the left. We started here, we're now going to start here. We're going to go the opposite direction. Okay, and then one more time. And then you can fold these under.
Wow.
Nice.
And it's
That's cute. Yeah. That's a cute little.
Isn't that a cute little challah?
Yeah.
They never come up about that big.
That's a real cute little challah.
Yeah.
You can make those into challah rolls if you wanted to do, if you had the time, and the pachka time, I always say, if you have the time, and so you have a real cute little, yep. So there's that. And
You
we,
might have the time, but you might not like to touch it.
well, this is true. It depends if you want to, exactly,
And it's the time.
exactly. I have to say, I wish I had pictures. I had made challah roses, 150 for a wedding. Challah, it was a recipe. It was the braiding was from the challah prince. I learned it from him, and it was, I'm trying to remember. I think it was squares. It was 6 squares, and you put them on top of one another, and then you roll it up and you cut it in half, and you kind of spread the petals on. They were beautiful. 150.
Wow.
Okay. Next, you want to see a filled challah. So we'll do a 3-strand. I'll make the strands a little bigger because your strands, when you fill a challah, you want to, you need the room. You can't do it on a small, so I would say probably a 5-inch strand. I'm sorry, a 5-ounce strand.
And your others have been 2.4.
They were 2.5 basically. Okay, 1, and I'm going to make a 3-strand challah with this.
When you're making dinner rolls, you use that little size right there.
What? I don't ever make dinner rolls. I don't make dinner rolls.
Really?
No.
My cousin does. She's got 400 of them at a time.
Oh dear. No. All right, 1, 2.
You ought to see the mess she makes. She's blind.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Amazing. Pinky, is he your new best friend? Yeah, because you feed him.
Yeah, she can't do that because she can't see the scale.
Okay. All right.
Hold on, look real quick.
All righty. So it's basically the same thing that you do with one added So when I do a filled challah, I usually do 2 out of 3 strands. Just because the way it distributes and I think it looks pretty that way. You can fill all of your strands but don't only fill 1. 2 or 3 is fine. So you're going to make a strand like you normally do. You're having the best time with him over there. He's so funny. Okay, so what I do, now I'll tell you what I'm using. You could buy this at Kosher Market. This is the Parv one. They also have a dairy. The dairy, I think, has a white lid. Oh, no, dairy's clear. That's the dairy. And it says D.
The chocolate spread.
Chocolate spread. It's Israeli chocolate spread. So that does come Parv and dairy, which is terrific. And then this was my new find at Costco. They're Parv, no sugar added, but I love bittersweet chocolate. So it's really a great bittersweet chocolate and it gives a great taste. And they're Parv. They're chocolate chips. Dark.
I went through a whole bag.
Did you really?
You mean just as a chocolate to eat, not this?
No, to bake with. Yeah, no, to bake with.
Benita, maybe you want to try this, you want to put some in a tasting cup or something.
I think you're craving some.
That's chocolate.
You're not a chocolate man?
I like real chocolate.
This one. Oh, you like dairy chocolate.
I barely eat it, but if I eat chocolate.
Are people going to just put their hand in and take it? No, you know what? I'll give you a spoon. How about I give you a spoon? All right, do you need more? Okay. Uh-huh. Okay, so when you want to fill a challah, it could be filled with anything. This is the point that if you're making a raisin challah, you're going to do raisins. If you're making chocolate chips, you're going to put in the chocolate chips. If you're making a fancy challah like feta cheese and sun-dried tomatoes, this is when you're going to put it in there.
Do you only do it in one strand? Or you do
No, I'm going to do it in all 3. So
Benita, can you use your challah dough to make a pretzel?
no, it's a different dough. I've made pretzel before for Smile on Seniors. It's a different dough. Yes.
I made this
With onions. Yeah, I use dried onions. You can use green onion. What's lovely is if you know what kind of challah you want to make, a portion of your oil, use half vegetable oil and then sesame oil. Sesame oil will add a delicious taste. Then add some sliced green onion in here and sesame seeds, and you'll have like just a great, interesting. You can do anything in a challah if you use your imagination. So we're going to make these strands flat. That didn't work so well, so let's move that right there.
teach everyone how to do it here, right there.
Yeah, there you go. Very easy. Oh, that was a very simple fix.
The dough repair.
A dough repair. Okay. So, and you don't want to overfill it. Take a little bit of chocolate and just spread it down the middle. You don't really need much more than that. Don't do it to the end because you want to be able to get the ends to fold. So you've got your spread, and to make a chocolate chip challah that you can serve with dinner because it's Parv and yum. If you wanted to do a cinnamon sugar challah, this is the time to do it. Fill your strands with cinnamon sugar. If you cinnamon sugar the top, because of the heat that I use, it'll burn. And so you don't want to do that. You just want to do an egg wash.
What about putting nuts in it?
You could do that too. You can do that. I had said
What nuts?
about wet nuts. You know, there's so many. Use your imagination. Linda had said, "What if I put walnuts in a challah?" And I said, because I'm always thinking the next step, or can't make anything easy or simple. Get wet nuts, the jar of wet nuts that you find in the ice cream aisle or for a sundae, and put those in here, because just a plain dry nut is not. It's just going to be a plain dry nut. It's not very appetizing. And it may not incorporate into the dough as well as you would like, but if it's a wet nut, you can even soak them in honey yourself, mix them with honey, and then put it in there. And that way they do clump together. So we're just going to fold this up.
Wow.
Benita, I've used the Trader Joe's honey roasted pecans. Came out with.
Oh, sure. Sweet and spicy. They have sweet and spicy pecans. They have sweet and salty pecans. So there you go. And just make sure that you seal it up well enough. Pinch it together and seal it well enough so that it might, but it shouldn't leak. So there's one.
Did you do that to all the piece then?
I will right now. Yep. Usually I leave the middle one. So I'm going to leave the middle strand.
Okay.
Yeah. Plain.
Yeah.
Yep. And because the dough's getting harder, because it's been sitting around a while, usually we work quick. So that's the middle strand. I know it's a workout. And then whoever wants to work some dough, I have containers that if you want to work on some dough and make a challah for yourself and take it home and bake it. Because by the time you get home, if you go home, by the time you get home, it'll be risen and ready to bake. Risen and ready to bake. Let's turn this around.
Wow. Cool. You make it look easy.
It is easy.
Yeah, I know, but if
It is easy. I mean, you see, it's easy. It's just time consuming. All you need to do is dedicate the time, but it doesn't.
you know what you're doing. I have to be going back and forth from the recipe.
Well, you see, I've only been baking for how many, and I'm still going back and forth to the recipe. So that strand looks much better than the first one.
Yeah, that's me. So did you put something else in it? Like,
Nope.
no. Oh, you don't ever put different flavors in your brand?
Usually not.
You ever make a rainbow?
No. If you're going to, you can color your dough. You really need a mixer to color the dough. I have colored dough, and so what you need is a gel that you put, not food coloring, but these are much better than food coloring with bread. So if you were going to make for a 3-colored 3-strand, weigh out your ball, your 3 sections, one at a time, put them in your mix master with a couple of drops of the gel color, mix it up so all your color incorporates, and then go to the next color. But if you mix it by hand, it's not going to incorporate well, and it's always going to be marbleized.
Would it be a bright color, like you could use it for a July 4th party or something?
Yeah, I mean, you can see how the color comes out as you're doing it. So start slowly with adding your color, and then add with anything else you can always add, you can't take away. So always go slow.
Don't mix that with the gel on your nails.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When they have bagels at Shoppies.
Uh-huh.
Color,
Uh-huh.
what do they use in that color?
I don't know, but I don't think they use food coloring. I would think they use gel. There's also a powder.
Yeah.
Yeah. But food coloring is is watery, and it's kind of gross. But you can ask them, but I believe, where's Rabbi? I believe that all of Chompy's products are kosher. No, okay.
Their bakery, which has certification.
All bakeries kosher.
Meaning not in a restaurant.
No, I meant the baked goods.
Yeah, but you have to find those.
It's their challah, although Neil told, whatever.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All right, so here we go with the street, pardon? Only the challah, although one of the owners told me that all the baked goods are kosher. Okay, here we go with a 3-strand challah. It's the easiest thing ever. There you go.
That's annoying.
Oh, yeah.
There's your challah. I have a little opening here. Put that there and get another piece of plastic.
Everybody's gonna eat well the next week. Yeah, with all this.
Okay, there we go. And you can see these are starting to rise. Also, so the challah that we made together. Oh, this is the challah that we made before. So I'm going to add this dough to that dough. And if you want to come up and do a 3-braid, a 4-braid, or a 6-braid, please do. I'm happy to do it with you. That's why I made so much dough. And we've got tins for you to take home. Yes, you can make your own.
Zoom, I can turn it off, correct?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you for joining. Maybe you could say it tonight.
Oh, and thank you for coming to my kitchen.